Okay, Ben, the first question I've got for you came from some DJs were talking about this, and they were talking about when they are trying to control some of their uplights, and they're using DMX, and they were trying to have them kind of dim and do some different things, but they were saying it wasn't a smooth. They weren't perceiving it to be smooth, that it seemed to be almost kind of jumpy, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering, what would cause that effect? Because I've seen some things with some of my lights over time that I would have perceived as that, but I just thought it's because I'm old and blind, type of thing.
Well, both might be true.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot of factors at work here, and I don't want to oversimplify it, although I do think there's probably a simple one that we could probably find is the case most of the time, and nobody's going to like the answer. But first, I think I want to talk a little bit about what's going on here, and I'll say that we're going to talk a minute about how LEDs dim, and we're going to talk a minute about what the DMX signal is like, and these things could manifest themselves in the way the console sends the signal, the refresh rate of the signal, which we'll look at in a second. It could be the chip design of the receiving chip in the light. Probably very likely is, and also the software that lives on that chip. And I'm trying to find a nice way to say that low-cost, low-quality lights are more likely to do that. Mm-hmm. Could also be low-quality, low-cost controller. It could be a combination of both. And then if we add wireless to the mix, that could be part of the issue as well. So it could be any one of these or a combination of all three. But, more often than not, we find this problem with low quality fixtures. Okay. And that's because they're low cost, right? You can't just make something cheaper and still make it as good. That usually is not the case, and almost always is not the case. So let's take a look at them and do a screen share real quick. Let's take a look at some of the things that are at play here. So this is how LEDs dim. And I can no longer see you. There we go.
Yep, sorry, I can see it. Yep, looks good.
Yep. So this is basically how LEDs dim. They just turn on and off really fast. And so what we are looking at here is my very crude drawing. Sorry, I just literally did this a minute ago. But this is my drawing for pulse width modulation. And the up pulses are on, the down pulses are off. And, we could see that at the top we would have a light at, let's say, 50% intensity, where it's on half the time, off half the time. And the bottom one, it is now on 25% of the time, off 75% of the time. So that would be, how it would adjust that intensity. Mm-hmm. And the timing at which these pulses occur, this is also what causes flicker in video, because video is really just a lot of still pictures running by very fast, right? So the frame rate of the video and the pulse width modulation rate of the light can create that strobing effect. But in this case, it could be, how this is working in conjunction with the low-cost power supply and a light, and there could be some things going on. But let's take a look at how a DMX signal looks. Come on, let's go. There we go. So DMX is an 8-bit signal. It actually runs on a fairly old protocol, the RS-45 protocol, which on one hand makes it pretty robust and reliable, but we're limited to 8 bits of data. And this is what that looks like. So we've got our start bit, our 2 stop bits, and then the 8 bits in the middle are data bits. And it's binary, so all bits low would be, a 0, this bit high would be a 1, so on and so forth, right? And down here we can see, and this is somewhat adjustable, but here we can see what a DMX signal might look like. And these are my bytes. And we know there's 512 channels. There's actually 513 bytes. There's a byte 0, but there's 513 bytes of data that carry 512 channels. These bits have to arrive at a prescribed time, 44 microseconds here, and then there's a break, and then there's mark after break, and all these things. We often see this maybe referred to as like refresh rate in a console. Okay. So if we have refresh rates in consoles and lights that are not compatible, that could also create this, where it's just not a smooth dimming or transition. Some controllers and consoles, this is a software, and you can see this one's really old, 2012, but here we can adjust some of those parameters. Typically, where it's somewhere around 40 to 44 DMX cycles per second. I wouldn't go in and start messing with those things, though. Unless you make a good note of what you had before, and you can go back, because you could also create some real problems where you essentially lose the control. I think the really simple answer, which I wanted to provide a more detailed answer, but the simple answer is probably low-cost power supplies and chips in the lights, or low-cost signal transmission over wireless, and potentially the controller as well. So could be any number of those things, and it's really hard to pin down which one it would be.
I was kind of wondering, as I was, thinking about DMX and some of our little programs that they have already built into them when we're going through, and let's say that we're looking to change colors with the DMX channel, is that 0 through 10 is maybe one color, 10 through 20 is another, that type of thing. And I was wondering if it was similar, possibly in the dimming world, is that 0 through 5 might be one dim setting, and then 5 through 10 could be another dim setting, and that type of a thing could be, if that would be carried over into dimming. Certainly
in the software and the light, it absolutely could be. It's perhaps that, but when we think about, let's say, 100% dimming, right? We've got, 0 to 100, but our DMX value is 0 to 255. So we should have more resolution in the DMX signal if we went simply down in steps, 255, 254, 253. It's possible. I'm not going to say it's not, because I think we're trying to talk about potentially thousands of different fixtures here. But that also could be sort of a manifestation of how that software is integrated into the and when I say software, I mean in the light itself is integrated into that interpretation and how it translates that DMX value out to a pulse width modulation value to change the intensity of the LEDs.